This is BBC Radio 3. We're running a little late, but we come now to Mixing It with Robert Sandell and Mark Russell.
Hello, this week we have an interview with John Parish, one-time collaborator with PJ Harvey, now a producer and solo artist in his own right. He tells us about his new solo album, Once Upon a Little Time, and his return to singing. And around Mr. Parish we have music by Fortet, Bell Orchestra, Phonofani, Andrew Peckler, Mugerson, Thomas Bruckner and Danger Doom.
And we begin with something short and sweet by Greiser, a purely instrumental, almost jazz band led by composer David Malid of Meahead. They veer between moody trumpet-led ballads at one extreme and pure sound experiments at the other, but we're not in an extremist frame of mind just now because we've chosen one of Greiser's minimalist rock moments. This is Staccato. Greiser, a track called Staccato from the album called Greiser, which will be available next month on the Torch Recordings label, which I think is their own. Greiser, I should tell you, is a slang term apparently indicating an individual with specialist knowledge, and the band themselves are David Malid, who plays, well, pretty much everything, guitars, keyboards, various other things, and writes the music. Sub Sabasas on bass and electronics. Dylan Howe plays the drums. Jay Phelps plays trumpet. And Jenny Adajayan plays cello. Rather well on that track, I thought, towards the end.
Nice to hear the bass guitar not just churning out a riff, sort of doing harmonics and slides.
Yes, that is one of the most, I suppose you could say, approachable tracks on the album. The other one, which I was tempted to play but didn't, was the one called Semiconductor Archive, which is based around an A-flat electronic tone.
So it's quite experimental, the whole thing.
When it has a mind to be.
Right, Fortet, the working name of producer Kieran Hebden, have a new single out. This coincides with their forthcoming autumn tour, and we'll put the dates of that on our playlist. This EP is a remix of the opening track of the most recent Fortet album, Everything Ecstatic. The churning bass and thunderous drums are still here on this mix, but I love the addition of the vocals by Stone's Throw's Percy P. They seem to run right across the beat in wonderful ways. This is A Joy, featuring Percy P.
Still a got game in the spot, main and back hood of Hollywood, top dames with the hot frames. Cash jack, my flowing back for more. I deserve more than the black to show us stacks of dough. The hype after I touch the mic, better clutch it tight or she get stuck tonight. I'm knocked down to the street of the chat line. At times I said I'm one of you that sign kicking fat rhymes. Freaks go wild at each show. I'm too deep, bro. I come with the heat, Joe, and unique flow. Now these everyday cats, way back, couldn't say whack rhymes. The lines had to play track. Crowns again, astound the men and women in any town. I make a legendary status now and then. Earn my keys, turn the streets when it concern my peace. Eating, even cheating, to learn for free. Yup, the best in the game, destined to flame. Those who question my fame are testing a shame. Cats know I'm cold, but can't hold a nose. The flow and rope, gotta play it. Can't say it cause it's going to dope. Action man's how I had the fans. In the battle of winning cash, I'm planning to be the last to stand. Prepare cats to hear raps, to merge your earwax. Ripping tear tracks to end your career, Jack. My raps are nice, I sacrifice years for my career. When I ain't here, hoping your cheers after life. From the BX, it's the legendary Percy P. Rapping for my man, Fortet.
Quartet, a track called A Joy featuring Percy P, and that is on a 7-track EP, all remixes of the same track, which is on the Domino label.
A fantastic groove to it, that.
Yes, we think that features the drummer Steve Reed, who was on the album Everything Ecstatic, and he's enhanced it with some drum samples. And
Kieran
that,
Hebden has a really good
bass
thing going with the drum kit, doesn't he? Now, Bell Orchestra were a side project of a couple of members of the ultra-fashionable Arcade Fire. Richard Perry and Sarah Neufeld have just made a quietly beautiful album of instrumentals featuring that piquant blend of chamber instruments, rock textures, and a few gobbets of electronic wisdom which we associate with musicians based, as Bell Orchestra are, in Montreal. The album's called Recording a Tape, The Colour of the Light, and on it there are 3 different versions of Recording a Tunnel. This is the last one, on which the treated sound of traffic, in presumably a tunnel, is subtly augmented with squiggles of music, concluding rather magnificently, I think, with some melancholy gusts of French horn. That's Bell Orchestra and a track from their album Recording a Tape, The Colour of the Light. That's actually the last track on the album. It's called Recording a Tunnel, The Invisible Bells. And that album's out on Rough Trade.
It's a fabulous combination of sounds, the treated traffic noise, that sort of strange bell texture, and that lonesome French horn is a real masterstroke.
It is, isn't it? And I don't know if it's just familiarity with the general style of the place, but it does remind me intensely of the music of that city, Montreal, where they come from.
It's a sort of more experimental version of the rock chamber orchestra idea, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right, Fona Fanny is the working name of the Norwegian electronics meister Espen Sommer Eider. He's just released his third solo album, Oak or Rock. It takes as its starting point acoustic sounds, and then it delves into them in microscopic detail, often using software that he's designed himself. Here's a good example. The starting point is the singer Maya Ratka's voice. It starts off in little electronic shards, and it builds up to a complete song, which is what I imagine she originally sang. It's called Cloudberry. was Phonophanny from the album Oak or Rock, and that track was Cloudberry, featuring the vocals of Maya Ratke, who's also the vocalist in the trio Spunk, and that is on the Runogramophone label.
It's interesting the way, as you indicated, that her vocalist sort of starts off deconstructed and gets reconstructed as the track moves on. It's a good album, that. My only criticism of it, and it's not really a criticism, is I wish there were more vocals on it, because I do think that this guy does great, sort of unusually sort of sonically confident things in the electronic area, but I think he's really good when he works with voices. Now, John Parish is one of the grey eminences of British rock. Highly influential but seldom seen, Parish fronted Polly Harvey's first band in Bristol in the late 1980s, produced her album To Bring You My Love, partnered her on Dance Hall at Louse Point, then worked with Giant Sand and Eels, and most recently released some solo albums, the most recent of which is Once Upon a Little Time. Interestingly, this is the first record Parish has actually sung on for over 15 years. I beat a path to his home recording studio in Bristol and asked him what took him away from the microphone in the first place.
It wasn't like a sudden decision where I said, OK, I don't want to do it anymore. I just kind of stopped. I'd become, I suppose, uncomfortable with the role of the singer. I didn't feel I was being me on stage. I was kind of like taking on this slightly larger-than-life persona and being a front man, which just isn't me. And I guess it was me when I was younger. And as I got older, I found myself thinking, I feel slightly silly like this. And if I'm feeling like this, then it's probably coming across like this, so maybe I should just stop. And it took a very long time before I felt comfortable to actually get up on stage and just sing without feeling as though I had to adopt a different persona. And I think a lot of it was probably the simple thing of having kids and sitting around the house singing, and it became a normal thing to do, so I didn't feel as though it was a performance.
I suppose one of the things that people do tend to do when they hear somebody singing is to read some kind of character into the person that's doing the singing, whether they think it's the real person or whether it's an imaginary kind of made-up persona. That's something like all listeners, I suppose, do. Do you actually feel that you have to adopt a persona when you're singing?
No. As a writer, as a lyricist, I'm definitely writing about things that have either happened to me or happened to somebody that I know. Writing from personal experience, but not necessarily about one specific event. And I'm trying to sing them in as unaffected a way as possible. So so that there is, if somebody's looking for insight into my character, I guess that you could find them there for sure.
What would they think about the song called Boxers in that case, which is the second track on the album which we've played on the programme, which is a very interesting song, I think.
Thank you. I don't know, that would be hard to say. I guess they would probably think that's talking about a number of things and obviously drawing analogies, and it might be about something different to somebody else because, you can pick up whatever you want from that.
But it's a song about relationships.
Sure. Like boxes, like boxes. Nobility and violence, and no ability to see sense, like boxes, like boxes, blanket and bare-breasted pugilism. How we all try to keep the fight within, like boxes, like boxes. For safe safety in a clinch, and they were bruised but unflinching like boxes.
I must say, one of the things, aside from the striking nature of the analogies and the lyrics, that we noticed was the way it was recorded. The vocals, especially when the female vocal comes in, you almost jump. You've done something very clever, it seems, with the close miking of a lot of these voices.
There's nothing clever about it, really. It's just the way I like to hear voices. So it's not doing things as opposed to doing things, and that people are so used to recording vocals with reverb and effects and whatever, that it seems that most people are kind of taken aback if you just record a voice very close to the microphone with no effects whatsoever, and you just place it quite high in the mix. And a lot of people are quite nervous about that, because it almost doesn't sound like a professional recording, I suppose. But I really love that. I've always loved very, very close voices. So to me, that seems the obvious way to record something.
And do you distrust processed sound?
I don't distrust it, but I'm not very interested in it. For me, it's if a piece of music is really going to involve me or move me in some way, I have to feel some kind of an emotional connection to it. And if I can hear electronic processing between the artist and myself, that for me, that puts a distance there that makes it harder for me to feel that involvement.
How's your relationship with the music recording technology changed? Because you've been recording now for, 20 years, say? And a lot's happened in those 20 years. We've seen massive transformations brought about by sampling. And how have you sort of steered a course through this?
Some would say a steady Luddite aesthetic, but
I wasn't going to say that.
I wouldn't necessarily agree with it. I have nothing against technology, but I'm definitely not interested in it per se. I've never been one of those people that's interested in how things work. I'm interested in what they can do for me.
You say you're not a big fan of technology, but there's quite a lot of it I notice in your lovely little studio here. There's a large bank of pedals down here and a rack of effects winking at me from the other side of the room. What have you actually got in here?
Okay, well, I'll spin you around from over there behind you. We've got an old 1/4-inch machine. Moving on to the keyboards, that's a Pixie organ right behind you, which is like a little bellows, electronic bellows thing. Probably the first Casio keyboard that was ever designed. I bought it for £5 at a car boot sale last year.
£5 for that?
Yeah, it's a very fine buy. Then you're right, all my foot pedals down there, which are really my main effects when I'm recording, stomp boxes.
These are guitar effects, mostly.
Yeah, they're guitar effects, but they sound good on vocals, they sound good on drums. They work on anything for me. I think they're great.
They look veteran, some of these effects pedals, is that right? Or have they just been stomped on a lot?
They've been stomped on a lot. Yes, I mean, some of them are pretty old, but I don't buy vintage pedals. I buy pedals that I like the sound of. Guitars, on the other hand, I do like to find old guitars, so there's a whole bunch of
There's a rack of guitars over there, isn't there?
Guitars there, yeah. The oldest is that 30s National, and I guess the newest is probably about 30 years old now.
Which is what?
Which would be the Fender Telecaster bass. Then yes, I do have a couple of effects, but I hardly ever use them actually. Compression is pretty much the only effect that I'm a fan of. And that's just because it helps you bring things even closer to the front if you want to.
So you're saying, hand on heart, there is not a sampler in this room?
There is a sampler, and on the sampler, I've got one disc with some Mellotrons sounds, and that's the only thing I've ever done with it.
And you've got a small mixing desk?
Yeah, just a little mix, just for doing stuff.
And it looks like a very old Echo.
Yeah,
unit.
That's one of my two Watkins copycats. The other one's down there behind your bag. They're both great, and they both sound totally different to each other.
They're 40 or 50 years old, these things, aren't they?
I suppose they are, yeah, but they still sound amazing. I love the sound of those.
So I detect there's a slight bias in favour of old technology rather than new here, John.
There is, and mainly because I don't know. There's just, to me, there's something about the sound of old technology that's sweeter, and I just relate to it.
Did you write the songs very much with this band in mind, or with them actually even in the room?
Not with them in the room, but certainly with them in mind. I'd met Marta, the keyboard player and the vocalist, in Sicily when I was doing a record in Catania. I really liked what she was, the way she played. I thought she was great and quite off the wall. And I met Georgia, the bass player, on another session down in Rome, and that was when I started to have this idea of putting a band together of musicians that weren't me and some non-British musicians, and I thought I'm definitely going to use those two. Jean-Marc, the drummer, I knew from before, and I knew he would fit sort of emotionally and musically with that particular lineup. And so, I wrote the songs knowing who was going to be playing on them, but not knowing exactly what they would play.
And this idea of having a European band, how did it come to you, or rather a non-British band?
I think it was just one of those things when I first worked in Italy, particularly, because I wasn't really aware of the alternative music scene there. I was quite taken aback when I first went there and discovered how many interesting musicians there were. And because it's quite, because the Italian alternative music doesn't get out of Italy much, because generally they're singing in Italian, they were doing a lot of things that to me were quite unusual, because I guess they'd started to develop their own way of doing things that wasn't so much informed by, say the same influences that British or American musicians. But the way there's less separation between social life and work there, so things would kind of blend in, rehearsals would blend in with kind of dinner and and then a recording session and then the studio engineer's wife would arrive with some wine or something, and it seemed to be other people were involved as well. That was one of the things that I really liked about the place, that family and friends weren't excluded from the process of actually making music. And to me that's nice, because then sometimes you get somebody who wasn't a musician, but has got a nice talking voice or something, and you just say, we'll put a mic up and we'll just record this, and everybody was very open for kind of anything happening. There was no embarrassment, no shyness or anything. It was a very relaxed atmosphere, and I felt that had encouraged people to sort of do a slightly more devil-may-care approach to playing. They weren't worried about just throwing something down very, very roughly. There was none of that kind of, hope we can sort that out with Pro Tools later. Or it was just like, oh, there it is, and it was, they probably wouldn't even ever listen to it again.
And which songs on the new album are reflective of that spirit, would you say?
Something like Even Redder Than That Too, I would say, was definitely
I was going to
like
suggest that one, actually, because as you were describing it, I thought, yes, that's the track on the album that most sums up that kind of, that sort of, everyone just sort of goes for it.
It was just completely, and then at the end of it, I just told Marco, the engineer, in fact I didn't even tell him to, he mixed it when I was out making a cup of tea somewhere, and literally I came back 10 minutes later and it was done and sounding great.
That feels like it's different to what we just tested to. Yeah, that's good.
The decision not to use as many different instruments as you did on your first solo album, I guess it would have been, How Animals Move, that decision was based around the limitations of the band you were working with, presumably, was it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I loved working with a huge band that we had on How Animals Move. It was fantastic. I mean, logistically incredibly difficult, obviously, to organise, but you could really make an amazing noise with all those harmonics. And I liked the fact that I could structure songs almost in 3 blocks. I had a block of musicians, that, a kind of a rhythm section, and then I had a block of musicians that were playing the basic structure of the song, and they were musicians that liked to have guidance of what they were doing. Then I had a few players like Adrian Utley and Jesse Morningstar and Jeremy Hogg who really liked to come up with odd textural things, and I let them kind of basically do their own thing. And so we had this sort of multi-layered orchestra, which was great. But having done that, I then thought, okay, I want to do something different. So songs with singing and a tiny small band.
I must say, some of the tracks, going back to that first album, some of the arrangements on this album are extraordinary. I mean, the actual title track, How Animals Move, towards the end is absolutely fantastic. I think all the...
It's like very uplifting.
The word tapestry sort of comes to mind.
Yeah, I mean, that was... You can't do that except by having a lot of instruments playing together, because you just start to build up all these other harmonics. You don't even know where they're coming from. And for me, that was, it's very exciting. That was what I loved most about that big band.
And how did the idea, that conception of making the album that way, come to you?
First of all, it's just started off as almost something to do with some friends in Bristol. I just thought, it'd be really nice, because at that point, everything I seemed to be doing was project-led in a way. I would be like asked to produce this, or asked to help on this, or to tour this, and I thought, wouldn't it be nice just to do some music without having to play it to anybody or do a tour.
Do it your own. Well,
like
this is your first solo album, wasn't it?
Yeah, I know it was. I didn't start out thinking, I'm going to do a solo album. It kind of, as has happened to most of the rest of my career, it's kind of been accident. Things have happened accidentally, and I've just thought, okay, seems fine. Let's do that. Why not? And we just started meeting up one evening a week in Bristol. And the first evening, there was 11 people showed up. So I just sort of invited all my friends. Thought, I don't know who's going to show up. And they all turned up and sort of sat there and said, okay, what are we going to play? So I thought, okay, I better come up with something for 11 musicians. And so I wrote the title track for it.
Fantastic. What about the track called Stable Life? That's another good one.
Yeah, I love that track, actually. I'm glad you picked that one out. The lyrics were written by a guy called David Donahue, an Irish friend of mine.
Who sings a lot on the record.
Sings as well. And we actually recorded it, just the two of us, in here in this room. And it was, again, a very odd track. And I just thought I'd really like to do that with the How Animals Move band, because I think we could make something great happen with that. And so we rehearsed it as a live thing, and it worked well. And I had Aaron, who was playing cornet in the band, sing it. But I thought, I really like David singing as well, so I'm just going to lift his voice from the original demo and just kind of spin it in. Of course, it was, neither of them were done to click tracks, and they probably weren't completely in the same key, But I just started spinning it in and tried to do it quite accurately at first. And then I realised that the less accurately I did it, the nicer it sounded, because you were just getting these very, very strange delays or suddenly come in ahead of the track, and it made the whole thing, very unstable, which felt
wobbly.
Great to me. Yeah.
Hold on to the stable
So, John, skipping right back to the beginning now, the name of your first band, which I often get wrong, Automatic Glamini, what were you trying to do with that band? It started in Bristol, I think, here in the late 1980s.
Yeah, which actually was started by myself and Rob Ellis, the drummer, Polly's drummer, and who also does his own music as well.
You knew each other from Yeovil?
Yeah, and we just wanted to do something different, and so we put a band together. Initially it was just the two of us, and we were both drummers, so it was kind of drums and percussion and singing. And then we added a bass guitar, and for a long time it was just a bass guitar and lots of drums and metal percussion. And it was, as a live thing, it was pretty unique and sounded great, and we very quickly picked up quite a strong following. But we couldn't seem to record it very well, and having now spent a long time producing and recording other people, I now know exactly why not, and it's a shame that I couldn't record it myself now. But we were basically definitely at the wrong time, because it was just as those horrible digital reverbs were being sort of swamped over everything that was being recorded, particularly drums. So all the kind of vibrancy and liveness of our drums and percussion thing, which was pretty much the whole essence of the band, was buried under these horrible digital reverbs whenever we went into a studio. So you just had these huge crashing snares that would last the whole bar, and you had just lost all the nuance of what we were doing.
So these were more or less instrumental rhythm tracks, were they, that you played?
We were actually playing quite poppy songs with just an odd lineup.
And when did Polly Harvey join?
She joined after we'd been going for about 5 or 6 years, and it was actually when Rob left. Me and Rob had a falling out, and so we got another drummer joined, and because Rob had been doing all the backing vocals, I thought I need to get a vocalist in. And I'd met Polly because she'd been coming along to the shows and giving me tapes of her stuff. She was only 17 or something at the time, but she already had a great voice. So I thought, I think I'll get that girl that's been giving me tapes, see if she'll join. And so she came in, and by that time we'd changed the lineup so there were guitars and things, and it was more, I suppose it was probably the last thing we did. You could actually see some clues of what I've ended up doing now.
And of course she's the only other person whose name has appeared next to yours on a CD, I think, I'm right in saying.
I think so too.
Because you did that record, John Parish and Polly Jean Harvey, Dance Hall at Lewes Point. Great title for that album.
Thank you.
How did the idea for that album come about?
Interesting you called it Lewes Point, actually, because I've always called it Louse Point, but I imagine Lewes Point is probably how you would pronounce it if you lived in that bay, because nobody's going to live in this beautiful
I sort of think
place.
of it in terms of Louisiana, I think is
right.
the reason I do.
It's actually on Long Island.
Ah.
It's in the Long Island Sound.
Okay.
And I stole the title from a Willem de Kooning painting called Rosy Fingered Dawn at Louse Point, as I call it. But the album came about from, I'd written some music. The first theatre show I wrote for was a very strange production of Hamlet, and I was given free rein to write as odd a music as I wanted to. And I wrote some quite, I thought it was pretty exciting stuff, but most of the shows we did, half the audience walked out or didn't return after the half-time break.
And the other half went away and formed bands.
That's exactly. It was more challenging than I had thought it was, I suppose. But Polly was one of those who stayed to the end. She thought it was fantastic, and she said, "John, write me some music like that so I can sing over the top of it." So that was the music for Louse Point. I wrote some stuff.
City of No Sun. Extraordinary.
It's pretty remarkable track,
isn't
it? That? Yeah.
Did you conceive it? I mean, that amazing, so histrionic chorus that comes crashing in. Was that the way you conceived it, or was that her contribution?
No, that was definitely her contribution. I mean, it built up. There was definitely a piece in 2 parts, and it was this smooth kind of dreamy part, and then it got fairly angsty. But I didn't know what she was going to do over the top of it. In fact, when I wrote it, I thought that was probably going to end up being one of the instrumentals, because I couldn't really see what you could do over the top of it. And she wrote this great words and this amazing part. And then the recording of it was fantastic as well, because she was going to do it in 2 parts, because she said, I'll sing the quiet bit, then I'll kind of get myself ready, we'll do the loud bit, and we'll reset the levels. And so we were going to do that. So we were recording the quiet part. And because it's in an odd time signature, she kept going wrong. We did it about 4 times, which is not like Polly at all. She usually just sings it, and it's there. And she was singing, she kind of got it wrong again, and she was so mad, she just went straight into the loud bit with the level set for quiet singing. So, of course, there needs to be a shot to the other side, like... hammering the other end of the desk, and it sounded fantastic. And me and Head, the engineer, were just going, wow, that's amazing. We were sitting there hearing it. It was so loud when it came out that we just thought, okay, keeping it, mistakes, everything, that's great.
Love me tenderly, my darling, in this city of light and truth. For this moment forever sing, for my darling that I love you. Singing breeze and silence. Lover, release me. I can't move, I can't breathe. No heart, no peace, no more, nothing.
And how is your relationship? I mean, you've done different things with her. You've played with her, you've recorded, she was in your band originally, you've produced her, you've played in her band. How has your relationship musically changed over the years, would you say? Developed?
I mean, obviously it changed because it changed on the basic level in that when we started working together, I was quite an experienced musician and she was, just starting out. So she took a lot from me in the early stages.
I remember she's always credited you with a huge influence on her.
Yeah.
Starting out.
It's a very important time, isn't it? When you're between 17 and 21, you're really, really finding out what you're doing at that time.
What sort of things did you teach her?
Well, it wasn't like we'd sit down for lessons, but just, just kind of, I suppose, the approach that I had then. I mean, sometimes it's come back to haunt me, actually, because I was very, very rigorous and disciplined in those days. And then when I became the guitar player in her band, she really turned it back on me for a while. I think it was sweet revenge. And I felt, well, I've got nobody to blame except myself. But, then when she left Automatic Lamine and did her own thing and almost immediately became very successful, with that rush of success, to see how she progressed because of the excitement of that and I suppose the validation that comes with that, the amount of progression she made in the first couple of years I thought was astonishing. So then when we actually got back to working together again, I felt that there was a lot that I could learn from her that she'd picked up, so fast.
Are you going to go on the road with your new band?
Yes.
Great. You've moved from, one band to another in very much a sort of project-led way for many years. Do you see this as a more permanent kind of direction now?
I definitely feel I'd like to record another album with this band. There's a really nice emotional tension between the four players, and I feel that it's kind of developing at the moment. And this record was, we started recording this album the day the band was put together, and I think that some of the songs changed as we went. By the time we'd finished the record, maybe we would re-record things just to get them at different stages to see when, for me, they were working best. Sometimes things are great that very first time you play them, there's an energy and a nervousness that you you never recapture that's very appealing to me. And some things you need to just shape them a bit more, because they're not quite fully formed at that stage. But I feel that really with the band at the moment, there's a kind of a nervous tension that's pretty exciting. But I definitely feel we're not fully formed, and I'd like to see what we can do with a bit more work.
He's making excuses, but she's not buying out. I don't care about another El Nino. You better hope I don't see you. She didn't know she wanted him badly, but she knew he was rough. He's rough, that bloke. He's kicking up the dust and you're smoking. I don't want him. He kicking Caruso for a squirrel about. I got nothing in my fuel can, and I'm going back to Diane's. She wanted him badly, but she knew he was rough. He's rough, that bloke. He's kicking up the dust and he's smoking. I don't want him.
John Parish and a track called Kansas City Electrician from his most recent album, Once Upon a Little Time. It was great fun meeting John in his home studio in Bristol, and our thanks to him for agreeing to do the programme.
Now, Andrew Peckler is a California musician living in Germany. Sample collages are his thing, and for his new album Strings and Feedback, he's used as his source Morton Feldman's work from the 1950s. Feldman, I'm sure you know, was the American minimalist composer whose monumental music unfolded over very long time spans. And you can hear the spirit of Feldman in these short, glitchy pieces. Here are just a couple of them, Ogendock and first, Localite. Andrew Peckler, 2 tracks from his album Strings and Feedback, Localite and Ogundoc, and that's on the Staub Gold label. I like the way he's taken the music of Morton Feldman, which, as I said before, is very long, and he's compressed it into short studies almost.
Are you suggesting that this illustrious modernist composer went on a bit, Mark?
No, I'm not at all, no. But you can although the sound of what Andrew Peckler does is completely different from Morton Feldman, you can hear the influence of it.
Now, Iceland's answer to singer-songwriters Mugisson is back on the promo trail with a new single, I Want You, which is taken off his recent album, Moogie Mama Is This Monkey Music. It's great, but so it was 3 months ago, and it doesn't sound like a chartboard sound exactly. But the chief point of interest for Mugisson lovers are the 2 new tracks. Here's one of them, a sparky little rocker with an inscrutable chord pattern that has Mugisson scrawled illegibly all over it.
Coffee,
Healthy,
meat,
racer,
toaster, shine,
finger,
liquor,
gotta,
brass,
congratulations. We wish you all the best. Sweetheart,
snack,
banana,
juice,
undies,
flour,
baby.
heat,
Mugisson, and a track called The Wedding Song from his latest CD single, I Want You, a 3-tracker which has the track I Want You from his most recent album and a couple of new ones, including that, which I think is a delightful number. You were commenting, Mark, on how much you liked the fact it didn't have any bass guitar.
Yeah, it's quite strange because it has this rocking groove, and which is carried really just by an old cronky acoustic piano and guitars. There's no bass in there at all. It's very bass-light, that track, which actually adds to the weirdness of it, I think.
The percussion has a funny clattery sound. In fact, at times it sounded a bit like a sort of avant-skittle group or something. Avant-skiffle group.
Although I'd like to hear a skittle group, I must say. Now, for 30 years, baritone Thomas Buchner has dedicated himself to the world of new and improvised music. More than 70 composers have written pieces for him, and he's featured on over 40 recordings. And what's unusual about him, I think, is the operatic classical quality of his voice. Now, you'd think in a jamming situation this might be a little bit jarring, but I promise you it's not. He shows remarkable sensitivity and imagination in his collaborations. Just listen to this sparring here with the electric cellist David Darling. This is from Buchner's new album Context, and this is part of an improvisation. That's the baritone Thomas Buchner and an extract from his improvisation with David Darling, the cellist. That's from the album Context, which is on the Mutable Music label. And I think what's great about their improvisation is they're always off doing into new ideas. It really does sound like a piece of composed music, I think.
I don't like the sound of baritones much.
But I think what's interesting to me, for him as an improviser, is obviously being a vocal improviser, you have to improvise the words and the sounds. And I think he does it very beautifully. It was only when I was listening to it, then I was thinking, what was he singing about? I think he does it very convincingly.
He does, I'm sure, but there was too much of that sort of rather ornate baritone vocal music flying around my house when I was a rebellious teenager, so I'm afraid I'm going to have to pass on that, Mark, but thanks for bringing it in anyway.
Anyway, if you'd like information on that or anything you've heard in tonight's show, you'll find it on the playlist, which you can get by writing to us, Mixing It, BBC Broadcasting House, London W1A1AA. The details are on CFAX, page 652, or you can email us, mixing.it@bbc.co.uk, or there's the website option, bbc.co.uk/Radio 3. Don't forget the new music message board where you can add any comments, and the playlist will be up there, and you can listen to this show for a whole week.
Time to go, and serenading us towards the exit tonight is a delirious hip-hop farrago concocted by the producer Danger Mouse, the audio prankster behind the Grey album, and the New York-based MC known as Doom. They've called themselves Danger Doom and have invited some friends along to their party, including on this track Ghostface Killer from the Wu-Tang Clan, who manfully tries to inject a note of menace into a piece that sounds like it really just wants to have fun. We're back next week with an all-CD edition. Until then, good night.
Good night.
Head on straight, mask on crooked, exit stage left with the cash gone, took it off like a kufi. The fit was a bit doofy, he tried to get screwy with that 2 for you, 1, 2 for me, G. Cut the cranky attitude, wet him like a handkerchief on a stanky fatter dude. Whether use a rapper or dang sanger, once you in, it's only one way out, like a gangbanger with a new crew keychain and street name. What said do he claim for fame, peak game, just to keep fedder and stay dip. You need it like a letter or better, a getaway whip. This old thing's rusted, encrusted as the gold rings, the old king's busted. Plan to end global starvation and fat her. Now what in tarnation did I go and do that for? Stuff happens, like getting snuffed for tough tit rapping. See, I told him enough, quit your yapping. The same applied to any and all chumps. The only question he had for y'all is how many lumps? 3 or 4, either or. Mon chéri or more, so why you need your heater for? The super villain slid in your party for free. Warner MC, get out of here kid, you're barred me.
I took my mask off, my face was missing for 2 days. For the record, G came back a year later, whole new identity. Tony Stark's pedigree, my money green like my nickname was Celery. Who was Ghost who flashed his toast? Never wore sheets but bulletproof coats. Oh no, the fans cried for the mask back on. Told him Ghost is dead, he returned at the crack of dawn. Few years from now, him and his pals before the Jetson era arrived. He'll be back summertime 2005 with a half a face iron, the other half water look like alien science. In the summertime, yeah, you can see the face boil, but the other side I keep lube with the pens on. You mad loyal, When the winter time come, what? I get stuck cause my brain on numb, like I ate 1,000 ices and frozen Pepsis. Aquaman's pops can't water check me, disrespect me, indirectly. I seen his feet and they both lefty. He stepping half correctly as I stroll the globe and terrorize the planet with a Bill Clinton mask and them play school hammers. Me and Doom always be the best on the landing. Superheroes for life until our souls vanish.
Check me out, my name is Bracken, that's a fact. I got a mom and a dad and they are out back. We sit by the pool and we nibble on snacks. Then we eat a big lunch and we all take naps. Why'd the beat stop? Hey! Hey! I got a mask too, so give me the mic!
You're no Doom.
Come on, Danger Mouse, give me that beat. On the bed around, love to hear percussion.
You suck.
Turn it upside down. Love to hear.
I know talent. You ain't got it.
I wasn't done.
Gracious me. The Mask by Danger Doom, featuring Ghostface, ending Mixing It, which was presented by Mark Russell and Robert Sandel, and the producer was Felix Carey.